Ladies and gentlemen, can everybody hear? Good. Good evening. My name is Mike Lake, and I'm the director of the Royal Commonwealth Society. And it's my great pleasure to welcome you, Dan, and your team here to our premises. And a warm welcome to all you, ladies and gentlemen, as well. The RCS is the longest established civil society organisation in the Commonwealth family, and we have a very broad interest and a remit that increasingly stretches beyond the member countries. And we look to view, really, the Commonwealth in the context of the world at large, and to share experiences in addressing challenges to society. I might mention here the very positive and important work the Royal Commonwealth Society is undertaking with International Alert on the reconciliation process in Sri Lanka, and of course with the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting imminent coming up in November this year. This is very topical for us at present, so we're very grateful for that collaboration. The Peace Talk series led by International Alert and the University of Sussex is an initiative with which the Royal Commonwealth Society is also very proud to be involved. And I'm sure that the experience that we can draw from the Democratic Republic of Congo has both direct and indirect relevance to the Commonwealth at large. I've been asked to remind you that the suggested hashtag for tonight is #PeaceTalks, and the event is being live streamed and recorded, although I believe, Dan, that it's only going to be audio, not visual. So if you want to get up and dance about, just do it visually, not audio. I'm now going to hand over to Dan, who will take on proceedings for the rest of the evening. Dan, thanks so much indeed.
Thanks very much.
I don't need that. You're wired up.
It should be. I think that was his fault.
I think it was.
Is it possible for you all to hear me now? My name's Dan Smith. I'm Secretary General of International Alert, and I want to thank Mike very much for welcoming us to the Commonwealth Club for another in our series of Peace Talks. And this is another one which, as Mike said, we're doing also with the University of Sussex. A couple. It's really strange that you give me the thumbs up after.
It's already sorted.
It's already sorted. Okay, that was slow feedback. One other technical point: mobile phones. It is much better if they are off than if they are silent, and it's really terrible if they're on and audible. So please turn them off. This event is probably going to take about an hour and 15 minutes or so we usually take with these. You can spend 75 minutes of your life connected to thinking and talking about one of the world's great problems rather than being connected to the world. It's a sacrifice everyone can happily make, I'm sure. We have four tremendous panellists here to help us pick our way through the tangle that is the conflicts in the DRC. Starting over on that side is Professor James Fairhead, social anthropologist from the University of Sussex. Beside him, Brother Tampa, who heads a non-governmental organisation. Sorry, beside me is Brother Tampa, who heads a non-governmental organisation called Save the Congo, who I thought I was kind of getting confused with. It's Alex Ntung, who's director of an analytical and research company called Expert Advisory and Research Services. And in the middle is Maria Lange, who is International Alert's country program manager for the DRC. We're not going this evening to identify a solution. If a solution to the problems of the Democratic Republic of Congo could be identified in 70 to 75 minutes of intelligent conversation, I reckon it would have happened already. What I'm hoping we do is that we air the issues in a way that casts light upon them and shows some of the interconnections and gets past some of the position taking that people are often obviously tempted into or drawn into, which allows us to understand the dynamics of conflict in order perhaps to see some possible ways forward. So we will be trying to, in this conversation, we will be trying to analyse the prospects for peace. That's why we've called it Congolese prospects. As much as we will be trying to analyse the problem of the violent conflict. We were talking in the room just beforehand about how far back do you trace this conflict, and possibly 1993 would be a good starting point, even before Rwandan refugees entered DRC. Perhaps go back to conflicts in the 1960s that one could be thinking about. You can draw a little bit of a line to them. It gets arguable, but maybe one can think about connecting that to colonial and even pre-colonial conflicts going. And by the end, the sort of the highest bit, so to speak, was back to the 17th century. And then we drew a line. We said we don't need to be discussing quite that far back. But these conflicts, which we are seeing now in Eastern Congo, have a history. They have a complex history. They have multiple layers of history. We're going to look a little bit in particular, but not exclusively, at the question of natural resources and what role that plays in the continuation of the conflict, and also at the regional dimension. Last year, I suppose it wasn't quite a peace, but a precarious something or other fell apart with the mutiny of the M23, what describes itself as the M23 movement. Earlier this year, there was a peace agreement. In one sense, a very tired Congo watcher would say, same old, same old. The force which had gone into the army, the CNPD, came out of the army, it was M23, there was fighting, there's another peace agreement, there's another regional agreement. How can we break through this cycle? I want to start the discussion by turning to Maria. And Maria, you landed, if you recall, at 9 o'clock this morning. So what's the situation which you left behind? Tell us a little bit about what is going on actually right now.
Well, the situation in Kivu in particular is very, very unstable. There is now 30 plus different armed groups in different parts of that province alone. And the Congolese army, in a bid to move troops closer to Goma, where M23, around the M23 position, have left security veterans in other parts of the province, which are rapidly filled by other militia. And so which creates pockets of insecurity and even massacres in other parts of the province, which are much, much less heard about, of course, because it's armed groups. So, for instance, in Walikale, which is one part of North Kivu territory, Kinga village, the UN has reported 150 deaths since May alone. And these are massacres committed by a group called Lange. So the situation is very unstable. There's also a high degree of sort of paranoia in Goma City, fear of another attack in 23, or fighting in general, because what people fear the most, of course, is the security vacuum that is created when one actor loses control and another takes control. It's the most violent time. And of course, there have been, as you said, also various attempts at stabilization. There has been the February 24th Accord of Panellists, and these are all, to some degree, promising developments, but those accords still need to have the flesh on them. And so there's much discussion about the arrival of the International Brigade. There's about 1/3 of the troops which have arrived, the Danish troops. But I would say that really right now it looks like the situation might have to get worse before it could get better.
Can you give us a sense of some numbers, just approximations? I mean, is there any idea about how many people are in these 30 militia groups plus M23 and so on?
I don't think anybody has really, there's no statistic about specifically how many there are, and of course numbers vary greatly. Any one militia group will vastly overestimate its numbers. There was a time when M23 were estimated by the UN to be around 2,000 or so. Then there were a number of defections around the time that was given to about 700 or so. How many of those might have since returned is impossible to say. Meanwhile, there are various other militias that were to recruit. So it's really important.
Okay, but some thousands in the militias. How many people either have thought to have left their homes or seen in danger?
There are now 2.6 million displaced in these statistics alone. Only internally displaced, not counting refugees. And there have been 25,000 refugees coming into Rwanda in 1 year alone.
So 2.6 million people this base.
Yeah.
And how big is the intervention brigade?
The brigade is meant to come up to roughly 3,000 troops. So around a third of that number has now arrived. But it's not clear when the others will arrive, and even from the moment that they do arrive, when will they become operational? When they do become operational, how will they be distinguished from existing UN troops? How will they operate? Will they operate with the Congolese army? That poses a whole set of questions, given the Congolese army's track record. So,
yeah. Barbara, from where you stand, what would you want to add into the picture Maria has drawn?
Right, a couple of things. The first thing we need to take into account is that this is in the first peace deal. This is actually the 10th UN-backed or sponsored peace deal in Congo, and with the exception of Tanzania, Mozambique, South Africa, and South Sudan, all the other signatories have been signatories to previous peace deals. So there isn't anything significantly new in that peace deal. And personally, I think in principle, it could lead into something. It could build, stabilize the region. But a couple of other things need to be taken into account. The reason Congo, because first of all, if you go back, 10 years ago, in 2003, we were in a very same situation. That we had the first European-led peacekeeping mission outside Europe sent to Congo, to Bunia, the Brothers of Congo. And after that, we had an incredible drive of political attempts by the international community to sort of stabilize the region. We had, the Sun City Accord, all the key militia gangs were reporting to the government. Kigali were forced to withdraw its forces from Congo, and then the national government was put together. All the great things were done to give Congo a chance, and that failed. And we need to ask ourselves, why has it failed? Why do we find ourselves 10 years later with over 10 billion spent, over more than 10 peace deals signed, that Congo remains in crisis? And the reason is, and this is one of the issues which all of us, NGOs and journalists and experts have missed out over the past 10 years. We have paid way too much attention to Kigali. And I agree, we should pay attention to Kigali. We should recognize what Kigali has been doing. But one of the key elements we've left out is Kinshasa. The reason we find ourselves 10 years later in this crisis is the crisis of leadership in Kinshasa. So we need to find a way to address that crisis. And I think if the current peace deal is coupled with an end to impunity, and we deal with the issues of insecurity, and we also deal with issues of illicit minerals and institutional failure in Kinshasa, then we could have a chance. But if we only follow the peace deal for impunity is left untouched, insecurity is left untouched, and the institutions of the state are not reformed and so forth, then we will find ourselves 5 years on in the same situation.
Okay, so let's just keep for a moment our eyes on the background.
Right.
What is the problem? What you said, which I absolutely agree with, is whatever problem Kigali creates, you've got to look at the problem of Kinshasa.
Indeed.
Right. So in a couple of sentences, what is the problem?
So, in humanitarian terms, I would say Congo has 4 major problems. We call them the 4 I's: impunity, insecurity, the international trade of blood minerals, and institutional failure. But the common denominator to those 4 problems is the crisis of leadership in Kinshasa. Kinshasa needs to be reformed. We need to find a way, whether by swaying Kinshasa to sort of pave the way for some sort of technocratic government if possible. But something needs to be done in Kinshasa. If Kinshasa is not dealt with, nothing will significantly change.
Okay. James, crisis of leadership, is that where it says? I mean, you have just so people know, you were living in this area in Eastern DRC some 25 years ago. Yeah?
Yes.
Sounds a long time, but back in the 80s and
in the 1980s,
doing studying and working with Oxfam and doing research and so on.
That's right, and I think what I can bring perhaps to this discussion is to step back a little bit from the intricacies of the present, just to see some of the structuring forces that are shaping why there is a problem in Kinshasa and the relationships with the external world.
And to do that, I do like to go back to the 17th century, but only very briefly, because Congo was the centre of a big slave trade, which instituted modes of governance which were extractive, which we call them kleptocratic today. The population of the Congo declined by about 10 million between the 17th and the late 19th century. As you know, the slave trade ceded first to the ivory trade, where the East African slavers came into the eastern part of Congo, right up to the river. There, they used the same extractive techniques, transforming political structures into modes of exaction. Those modes of exaction continued on into the rubber tapping world, which is made famous in the Heart of Darkness book. But there is a direct inheritance from the slavery through into the ivory, through into the rubber tapping trade of these political tactics which enabled people to gain control over certain regions. And what people fail to see sometimes is how the Belgian colonial era drew on the very same tactics. So the modes of dispossession of land in the Kivus, in the plantation establishment period, the modes of dispossession of people to move people out of the national parks were by force. They took people away from lands and resources, and they deprived people of their labour by force. So the Banande people from Butembo and Rivera regions of further north and North Kivu were forcibly displaced, moved to become labourers in the plantations in North Kivu at gunpoint in the 1920s. So the mode of governance that we see from the 90s to today actually is easily traced to this era. But also, so is the international mode of encounter with DRC as it is today. So, for example, in the Second World War, I'm going to quote here, the British in 1940 agreed on the necessity of preventing the territory's raw materials from falling into the hands of the Germans. It was too important to have Congolese resources under Allied American control to let them go into Nazi control. And at that time, that was due to the uranium which was being mined in Congo. The uranium that was delivered to Nagasaki and Hiroshima from Congo. Congo had become by 1958 a nuclear state with its nuclear reactors. So the American presence, the Allied presence, was fundamental to the late Belgian colonial period. That moved on into the Cold War. To quote again, it was said during the Cold War that the West would go to war to keep Zaire within the Western borders. So the Congo became the theatre of Cold War, a theatre, let it be said, of war at the time. The secession of Katanga was linked to the resources at this point around cobalt and other Cold War tensions. And then moving up to today, we find the new National Security Advisor, Susan Rice, saying, in fact in 2001, but she's now back in position, we must find effective ways to secure Africa's vast natural resources, its diamonds, cobalt, uranium, oil, timber, coltan, gold, so they don't provide currency for the world's terrorists. So in the 1940s, it was the Nazis. In the 1960s, it was the communists. And in the 2000s, it was the terrorists. But one way or another, Congo had to be deprived of their resources to prevent some other geopolitical struggle. So what is shaping the politics of Kinshasa, what is shaping also the local politics, are the resource extraction practices that configure national politics, but also configure exaction at a local level.
So, Alex, I mean, one of the things that people will often say about DRC is talking about it as a failed or a fragile state. But actually what James is talking about is a state which, if the state were an animal already, or if it had a life, not just an abstract concept, the state is pretty good at doing what it thinks it's there for. I mean, this is an efficient and an effective state, isn't it?
It is. I personally agree that really it had not been state. So we're talking about third state, collapsed state, or weak state. I wanted to go into a little bit of history to close the conflict today. Let's start from Ntung in 1885, when our Western leaders were carving Africa into artificial borders. Why it was tragic for Congo was that meeting handed over an area, a huge area equal to the size of West Africa, Western Europe, to a guy called King Leopold of Belgium. But what is even more tragic is that those borders did not consider the hundreds of ethnic groups that cross different borders, language and cultures, where the artificial border didn't mean so much, but actually the identity was about those people. Really, what is even more stronger again was during the colonial time, there was kind of an implementation of a strong law, which is quite complex, and that has not been able to be addressed until today. That was a law, politics of belonging, which is linked to land and, of course, the identity. What was complex about that law? To become part of the DRC, or to become Congolese, you have to belong to the state and its traditional authority. That means that you have to have two citizenship in a way. But what is even stronger is that traditional authority give you more authority or more rights, more than belonging to the state. So what that means? There was a kind of civic, which is a nation, which is a state, and native, which is belonging to having customer rights. Really, the complexity of the customer rights means that you have to have, is linked to ethnicity as well. Say, if you are on one particular ethnic group, and for instance, it happened that you don't have customer rights, automatically you don't have right to ethnicity. It's like basically saying, I'm born black, but if it happened that when they define that there has to be a law defining that I'm black, and if that law that existed to define that I'm black, then I'm not black, but actually you know that I'm black. You can be all So that is still going on until today. In addition to that, I'm getting a little bit closer to what today and what colleagues have mentioned, is that, of course, the legacy of brutality, which Professor James has just also mentioned, which dates again from King Leopold time, where, as I'm sure you know, 9 million people died in a matter of 12 years. And of course, the lack of a state, which I'll bring back to your question, and that's still from Mobutu time, and that's possibly why it wasn't fun to change the name 5 times over 40 years. And that's exactly a reflection of lack of state, which doesn't provide security and protection to people. And when they try to differentiate the dynamics of conflict in terms of the last 20 years, which is touch on regional issues, with those underlying causes, which goes it goes back from that law of belonging, so politics of belonging, identity, and stewardship.
Governance, natural resources, ethnic difference. The issue of land has just emerged briefly and quickly. The international dimension, which James talked about quite a lot, and now as a component of that, the regional. Maria, A little bit on the land question, just to pick that up in this horrible stew of conflict dynamics. And, you know, you talk about root causes in conflicts, and sometimes the root becomes so intertwined with so many different things. Congo isn't completely unique in that by any means, but this does seem a particular case of all these different things coming together, feeding into each other. So what about the land issue?
Well, I see it very much as being a triangle between land issues, power questions, so the access to management of power, and identity questions.
So when you say power, do you mean primarily lethal power or other kinds as
I
well?
mean political power. So political control at all levels, local level, provincial level, national level, etc. And at a local level, because of course, as we were saying, there are roots of conflict that are at local level, provincial level, national level, regional, they all intertwine. So part of the reasons why also the regional level can take predominance at certain points because it hooks onto other existing dynamics in the country. So coming back to this, there is a kind of interconnection between land and, if you will, you could call it resources more broadly speaking, access to management of political power, and identity, notably ethnic identity, and also national identity. The question that Alex just raised, which is around, are you a Congolese because you were born and raised in Congo, or are you a Congolese by way of your ethnic group? And actually in the existing nationality law there is a kind of grey zone that on the one hand it is a civic identity, but at the same time there's a reference to the ethnic group. So if you are a member of an ethnic group that was in Congo at the time when Congo was created, then you are Congolese. So it's civic on the one hand, but there's still a reference to your ethnic identity as well. And so this kind of question of whether you are, do you ethnically belong? Are you seen to belong to a particular territory, or are you seen to be an outsider? And even people who are coming from 3 hours down the road can be considered outsiders in one particular village, just because they're not from that particular village. Because belonging to a place and being under the authority of any particular customary chief, because in a context of state failure, what you have is a predominance of sort of customary authorities, so traditional chiefs, who in some cases have been replaced by political regimes to serve their interests. So that's how you claim your right to access to land. And the customary authority also claims its kind of right to authority through control of the land. Control of the land and the ancestors, etc. So for that reason, those 3 questions are closely interconnected. And although they play themselves out very differently in different parts of Eastern Congo, because each place has its own history and dynamic and mix and so forth, that kind of basic triangle is in evidence in almost all places in Eastern Congo.
Okay. Before we sort of keep on moving in an orderly way through having talked about today and talked a bit about the background and then moving towards looking ahead, and then at that point I'll start to ask questions about the panel. I've just got one other thing which I want to throw in, and I'm not sure who may feel like answering this, but there's nothing special, is there, about having multi-layered identities? I mean, even in, sort of coziest suburb of London, even in Hereford, you have, I know that's not a cozy suburb of London, you have a multi-layered identity. Not only in terms of national identity, where, we can be, I'm English, British, European, occasionally Norwegian, sometimes another little bit of my ancestry comes floating in. But then also in other ways as individuals, as to what your gender is, your sexual preference, your belief, in terms of faith, your political beliefs, and so on. And you see in many cases where one sort of category of identity and one level of identity will become suddenly particularly important for a while, as it did in the Balkans. And it's quite a well-traced and well-researched process happening there, both in Bosnia and in Serbia in particular. So is there something special about the layering of identity that you're tracing here and about its interaction with the other factors?
Can I just speak on what Maria mentioned? Well, Congo remains, to a large extent, a very traditional society. And to touch on the ethnicity questions, my father's Muyandi, from Bandung, the west of Congo, and my mother's Congolese and Kasai. So my father's side, my father's ethnic side, they are matriarchal. I belong to my mother. So if my father died, for instance, I wouldn't take anything that belonged to my mother, to my father. Everything would go to his nephews, because I belong to my mother. And on my mother's side, they are patriarchal. So I belong. I told you. On my mother's side, they are patriarchal. So I belong to my father's side. So if my mother died, I shouldn't take even a pen, because I belong to my father's side. So you find yourself in the middle. But that does not at all diminish the fact that I'm Congolese. Right? It does not. And I simply want just to be incredibly clear on this point. The reason ethnicity has played an incredible role in Kivus because of the question of land. When you add land into the equation, then it becomes an incredibly significant problem. But we need to keep our focus. But to say or to assume that we are in this crisis, that Congo is in this crisis because of ethnicity or because of that is absurd. Okay? It's completely absurd. It does not make sense. This crisis, let's pick, academics are sort of divided on this point. Some say 1993, some say 1994, some say 1998 when Rwanda invaded Congo the second time. But let's pick 1998. This conflict, we are in this crisis because of the 1998 invasion, like it or not. If that did not happen, God knows we probably would not have been in this crisis. And Rwanda did not invade Congo because Rwanda wanted to protect its land or something of such. They wanted to get hold of natural resources. The RCD Goma, which was the original Malaysia gang, did not come into existence because they wanted to protect certain ethnicity. They came to existence because Kigali wanted to officiate its invasion of Congo. And CNDP did not come into existence for the same reason, or for M23. So ethnicity and land have been manipulated by warlords and militia gangs in the same way that Mvuka manipulated ethnicity to remain in power. So M23 will talk about ethnicity because that gives them a legitimacy. And in your ear, I know this because I'm Congolese, and for a Westerner, when you hear the word Tutsi, when M23 or CNDP say, I'm fighting because I want to protect the Tutsi, the first thing that comes to mind is the 1994 genocide. And automatically you feel, God, okay, we ought to give them guns if we can, because they ought to protect the Tutsis. But that is a cover. That's not an issue. However, having said that, and I need to cover myself up in saying, now we have a real problem in which ethnicity has now become a real issue. And it has become a real issue in this sense. Now, every time there has been militia gangs supported by Kigali, the consistent line, the PR, which is a terrible PR, it works in the West, but it doesn't work on the ground. The PR has been, we are fighting to protect the Tutsis. And that's absolutely fine for the Western audience. But it's a terrible PR for those on the ground, because you cannot displace 2.6 million other ethnicities to protect the Tutsi. You cannot sort of create a humanitarian crisis. It simply makes no sense. And I really, really hope and wish they would stop using that PR, because it's simply making the whole situation much worse. And to talk about, there is no one, I think, in the audience or in the panel who will tell me, all they run and backed militia gangs, for instance, who have been supported by Kigali. None of their leaders is a Congolese Tutsi or Francophone Congolese Tutsi. There isn't. Most of them, all of them, are, I'm going to be quite problematic, are Anglophone. They came from Uganda. Luvantunda, and the one who's been arrested. So it's absurd to assume, oh, the Congolese Tutsis are fighting to protect themselves. It's not true.
Okay, well, you found a lot of bones of contention in there. Not to pick them all up. But James, you wanted to come to
Yes, it's on this relationship between land and identity. While I was living in the rural region, some people gained rights and access to their land through customary chiefdom. Other people were squatters. For them, the customary chiefs caused problems, but the Catholic Church enabled them to uphold their national rights against customary chief difficulties. Other people used development projects as a way of securing their rights. Other people turned to warlords eventually. What I'm getting at is that in order to secure your particular rights, you needed to play up certain elements of your identity. Your religious identity, your ethnic identity, your modernist identity, and indeed your warlord. And so these kinds of complex identities which become singularized and skeletonized, that occurs when you have a predatory state. It occurs when there is exaction and you need to be protected. It occurs when you have protection racketeering, which is what goes on throughout Eastern Congo. So this complex relationship between identity and particularly very varied forms of identity and the conflict have its roots in the predatory economic order.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, trying to think about how to move forward in this, what can and what is likely to unfold. Alex, where do you see prospects lying out?
I think there is really, as you could hear, there is a different dynamics in terms of understanding conflict in DRC. And what is really interesting is that different interventions have been based on probably wrong diagnosis. And for me, in terms of answering your question, is looking at the relationship between those dynamics, and especially tackling the underlying issues. We talked about history and how we link to today, and especially we're talking about something common in terms of what we're discussing is the lack of state, and which is really has capacity to promote that cohesion between the multi-layers of identity. There's nothing wrong of the examples you provided, which is for us here in British society is lacking in terms of celebrating those different identities. And if we have a strong leadership in DRC that recognize the people come cross identities and all different identities within one particular groups, and promoting that and celebrating that diversity as a resources rather than a negative thing. Say that's what I see as a prospect in terms of building strong leadership that sees people as the unified, and two, reforming security and justice sector, which is accountable to people because they have never been. I tend to think that conflict sweeps the leadership in DRC because exactly what Mr. James has been talking about. It does sweep them. I really would be naive to think that they don't know the causes of issues. So really it's about searching for real issues rather than providing wrong diagnosis, which lead to wrong solutions.
Maria?
Well, I'd say there is one part of the answer is about like the very topical, immediate developments now with the peace, security, and collaboration framework, and another part is more of a long-term general recommendation. I think on the one hand, it's very important to try and find coherence between the different parts of the international community's response. Because on the one hand, you have the International Brigade. On the other hand, you have the Peace, Security, and Collaboration Framework signed in Addis, which is supposed to also encapsulate the brigade, which has a regional track under which the countries in the region commit to stop interfering in Congo, and the domestic track under which the Congolese government commits to engaging in a number of governance reforms, security sector reform, justice sector reform, and so on and so forth. So it's very important to find a coherence between those two traits. The political process, Mary Robinson is in charge of, in charge of facilitating, and the International Brigade. And right now there is really a risk that the arrival, even just the arrival of this International Brigade, is seen by the DRC government as a promise of military victory to come. Or at the very least, as an opportunity to put off making political concessions and undertaking those essential governance reforms. And I come back to what you were saying about putting the focus back on Kinshasa. I think that is very important. And doing that does not mean letting the countries in the region off the hook. It means having a balance, and that is what the Peace and Security Cooperation Framework tries to do, but it is a very weak framework. There's nothing new in it that hasn't been signed a million times before and never respected. So I think it's also very important that the international community has the guts to say things as they are, and to really engage, for once, the Congolese government in a real dialogue about what are the requirements for domestic stability and good governance, which has to be the basis for also the Congolese government to be able to manage the regional meddling. Congo is, after all, not the only country in the world that has neighbors that have various interests on its territory, whether it's security, minerals, you name it. This is a condition that many other countries manage around the world. So surely the Congolese government is also should be able to come to a point where they can manage that in a constructive manner. It doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. There can be benefits for economic development of that region, both for the Congolese, the state, and for the people, as well as for the countries in the region.
But the elite which holds power has to be persuaded that there are gains in moving forward in that way, rather than doing what they know.
And the problem, I think, is that there is a very short-term focus on what can I eat now, essentially. And therefore, even if you could say that there should be a rational interest in having a little bit more stability, a little bit more infrastructure, because then the economy develops and there's all the more to eat. The cake grows bigger. But that requires having a medium-term focus. And if you don't have that, and your focus is only for a few years at a time, then even an investment of 5 years is too long. And that's part of the problem. I just want to say one last thing, which is, I think, at the end of the day, whatever, there's no magic solution, it's clear. But also, the international community, and also Congolese to a degree themselves, have to stop thinking about Congolese with this sort of infantile image, which, to some degree, the Congolese government itself puts across, by pointing always to outside actors as being to blame. This is not to say that there aren't also outside actors to blame, but basically taking away the power from the Congolese to find solutions to their own problems. So all solutions have to be focused on how can Congolese themselves be empowered to be the actors for their own change. And that has to be the focus of all of our interventions.
So I'm going to ask Baba one more question, but then I want the microphone ready to hand around and people to think what neat, crisp, well-pointed question they're going to ask. Baba, save the Congo. It's the Congolese job to save the Congo.
Yes.
I mean, isn't that where this conversation must come to? Yes.
Absolutely. I think Maria has captured the whole dynamic in the last 30 seconds. I mean, we've all made our mistakes. I mean, there's been way too much attention paid on Kigali, and we should pay attention on Kigali. But there has been absolutely no attention paid on Kinshasa. Journalists, NGOs, all of us, we have given Kinshasa a free ride. And that has been one of the missing elements. I mean, the Congolese there, so we've been fantastic on this one from the onstart. We have focused on Kinshasa. We've always made it clear, look, deal with Kinshasa, everything else will follow suit. But, our friends in the international community have decided to look at Kigali. But then in Kinshasa, well, we need to look at Kinshasa. So, Kinshasa is the focus, should be the focus.
Okay, so let's take some questions again, some thoughts and questions from the audience. There's a hand gone up right there, and you can start with that one.
Hi, good evening. Actually, I wanted to, it's a question, but I want to react also on the notion of a multi-layered identity in the Congo. What is very interesting is that, okay, now we're experiencing in Eastern Congo that conflict, but there is a question which I've never read anywhere, the international community or the experts ask, why is it that, let's say, when you look at South Katanga, where you had the Bembas, who actually have been trading between Katanga and Zambia, or during the war in Angola, where you had the Chokwe, who made business between Kasai and Angola. And then it's a well-known fact that people between Kinshasa, Kinshasa and Brazzaville, they cross back and forth. And then up north, there's also that say that Mobutu was not actually from Congo, he was from Central Africa. But why is it that in all these neighboring borders, the issue of identity has never reached the level it's reached now in Eastern Congo? And bear in mind that in the 80s, a lot of successful Congolese businessmen made a lot of money between Kivu, Rwanda, and Uganda. So I think that we are actually addressing the wrong problem when people talk about the notion of identity, because there is another fundamental question. Why is it that despite the fact that Congo is a failed state, as a nation, it hasn't really crumbled? What is it that holds Congolese as a nation?
Okay, thank you very much. We'll take another question, which could be one here, the gentleman from Alexander.
Hi, my name is Chiri Advisor. I'm from the Global Connection Builder. Congolese as well. I just came back from Congo. I was there for 3 months. My question is, basically, the first one is going to be about the peace between the M23 and the government. Yes, there's a lack of leadership in Kinshasa. Yes, we should do better, we have to do more, but we are asking ourselves a question as a Congolese people. We feel like the international community is divided now. There's obviously the left are telling us to do, obviously to work hard in terms of leadership, about what we have to do in Congo, to move forward. But obviously there's another part of the international community that are actually supporting the people that are causing trouble in the Congo. So we don't understand exactly what is going on. We're trying to help, but in the other hand, there's more people that are trying to help the Congolese people and the Congo. So we need to know what is the international community is actually doing for the Congolese people, because we had UN in the Congo for about 10 years. We have 17,000 UN soldiers in the Congo, but yet Congo still in trouble. We don't understand why 17,000 people in the Congo. In Goma, we have more than 5,000. They could not handle the rebels. So we asked ourselves quite a question: what is actually going on between the international community? They need to look at themselves as well to find out exactly what is the system that is causing the pain in the Congo that is hidden, that people don't want to talk about.
Thanks. We've got that question about what this thing that's called the international community thinks it's doing, and if it were a person getting up in the morning, how it would look at itself in the mirror. That's worth putting some shine some light on. And also this question about given that the identity issues are different and play out differently in different parts of DRC, was our discussion in danger of over-valorizing the identity issues, or did we have them neatly in place in relation to governance and land and so on? Why don't you start by taking a stab at whichever of those two you want, but not both, Maria.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll take the last one. Talking about ethnic identity doesn't mean treating it as if it was, a sui generis category that it just exists. People have multiple identities all over the world. They live with it without trouble. Again, also in Congo, as you were saying, there are many cross-border communities in Congo as well. Not just that people trade with the countries next door, but that you have groups that have ethnic affinity, language affinity, cultural affinity across borders all over Congo. So why does it create problems specifically in this? I think the question of political manipulation of ethnic identity is very, very important. Because if you have, it is the closest base for collective relationships. And if you have also in a context where the state basically doesn't function, or rather the state considers itself to have other priorities than what we might consider is the role of the state. So that also leaves free room for these kinds of manipulations. Because basically the center, Kinshasa, be it this government or any other, holds itself in power through a wide range of alliances with political actors at all levels of society, and plays ethnic communities out against each other in order to hold on to power, basically. So it's not about region ethnic identity in that degree, but also people have died and been killed for what they are in that region, and so therefore it has become something that people also do, perceive to be key. So it can't be treated entirely as if it's just something that is manipulated. So why is that phenomenon led to violence in the East and not in other places of the country? I think it's because it, in the East, coincides with a number of other conflict factors. So not just the regional factors, and of course 1994 was a watershed with millions of refugees, even though it's not like Congo was a peaceful haven before 1994 and all was well. That is not the case. But yes, that was a very upsetting dynamic, and this and the existence of resources that are easily extractable just on the ground also is affected. Plus, it's a region also that has a very specific history. There was a talk about slavery, etc. But actually, Eastern Congo is a region that was not subjected to slavery. Interestingly, because at that time, the Rwandese kingdom was kind of protecting that particular part, the North and South Kivu provinces, which is kind of interesting when you think about it from the perspective today. Very different situation. So I think that you have to look at the historic dynamics. You have to look at the resources and the weak presence of the state, or rather the predatory presence of the state, in order to find an explanation for why that particular convergence of factors and led to violence there and not in other places.
It's almost never ethnicity all by itself, does it? It's almost always ethnicity multiplied by something else. On this same.
Yeah, well, Rwandan kingdom has never extended its influence to Novo South Kivu. There is no such influence.
And that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the Arab slave traders that came that way
It
couldn't
did,
quite
through
get to
Tanzania. It did, through Tanzania, it did. But let me get back to the questions about why the Kivus. I mean, I will think explain to Congolese and others in these lines. We are in this situation today because of what Mobutu did in the past. We need to remember Angola spent 20 years under civil because of Mobutu. I mean, today Kigali, one way or the other, Kigali sort of supporting militia gangs in Congo. 20 years ago, Kigali. I'm really sorry. Kigali, the capital of Rwanda. Right, okay. Well, so 20 years ago, a couple of years ago, in fact, it was Mobutu. We were supporting a civil in Angola, and they spent 20 years. Thousands, hundreds of people killed and dead and raped and so forth. So that was Angola. The same situation, you had in Rwanda. You had Habyarimana, who was a dictator, and Mobutu essentially kept Habyarimana in power. Habyarimana, Rwandan president, died in Rwanda. His funeral took place in Congo to show how close we were with Mobutu. He was buried in Congo. In 1997, when Mobutu was running away, fleeing the rebellion, he asked for his body to be exhumed and cremated. Habyarimana, the Rwandan president, he's buried with Mobutu in Morocco today. Just to give you an idea of how close, So we did play a role historically in the many wrongs in our part of the world, and today, sadly we are paying the, we are suffering as a result of that. But to go back to the, why, a friend of mine raised the question of the international community. I think after 1994, there was an incredible sense of guilt in the world community. Not to sort of stand up against Kigali. I mean, the world community have not been sort of, saints in their doing in Congo, but they have done amazing stuff. The UN peacekeeping forces, South Africa played an incredible role in supporting peace deals and so on. So there has been a lot of initiatives. The reason we are in this situation because of the crisis of leadership in Kinshasa. But having said that, now there is a realization internationally. People want to see the conflict in Congo end. I don't think Obama would want to finish his presidency and having left this conflict untouched. For the first time this July, it will be 1 year since Britain, the Netherlands, and others decided to stop giving money to Kigali over Congo. And you need to remember, in 2003, Rwanda had its forces all the way to Mbujimai. Today, officially, at least, Rwanda only has its forces or support around the Kivu regions. So today, Rwanda has less influence than it had in 2003, but for some reason, we decided to stop money. So people are becoming more and more proactive in sort of helping bring an end to this crisis.
Still, the question remains, and focus onto it. What is it that the international community is doing or is not doing?
I think let's just go back to resources that we invested as part of our international community. 1.3 billion a year as part of the UN intervention in the DRC. 20,000 military personnel are there today. I've just been to DRC in March, and what is shocking is that they fly 100 miles to count corpses and observe them. And one thing which I do is stopping them and saying, instead of going to count corpses, why can't you prevent it before you can count people alive? Are you not able to do that? So really going back to the question, I think we have to understand the complexity of the mandates. I used to really question the same thing before, and I realized later that it all starts from when they leave, and when instead I'm talking the obvious. The mandate quite often limit the UN in terms of doing something or protecting people. And we're talking about brigade now, the new brigade which has mandate to intervene. Whereas the existing mandate was around peacekeeping. What is even more complex is when countries are providing their troops as part of UN missions. There are complex legal contracts in terms of whether they should enter into competition in terms of...
There's also the question of political will. Do you really want to have your soldiers die fighting militia in eastern Congo? If you don't, then probably your commanders are going to keep it a little bit down.
There is a little bit of frustration among, frustration among all of us, and why, for instance, many genocides where they have been observing and haven't done anything. So it is that mandate to peacekeeping and the mandate to peacemaking. But actually, in Congo, there have been some examples in 2006 in Mvuka where they were able to deter CNDP entering in Bukavu. So why other places? And why, for instance, we talked about minerals becoming fueling conflict in Eastern DRC. Demilitarizing minerals areas. Why is so big deal about that? You could, UN troops in 20,000. Yes, the challenge is the big size, the size of the country. And I know we're talking about 20,000 troops, but actually the country, if you imagine that from east to the west is the distance between London and Moscow. And that is just and you're talking about from Lubumbashi to the north, that's another more than 2,000 miles. So there is a challenge there, but they have capacity. They have capacity in terms of airlines. I come from DRC as well, and one thing which I would say,
sorry, we've got to keep our eye on time a bit, so make this the last part of your point.
Yes, I think it was just to illustrate the ineffective. Half of my parents are in very rural areas where there's no such a thing as clinic or anything. And what I was trying to say, I said to them, look, you're going over there and they won't be able to access the hospital. Could you bring them, please, for me? And they said to me, if they are very ill, we cannot bring them. But if they can walk, we can bring them. So, what are you talking about? Because of course, similar to other policy we have here, health and safety, if they die inside the airplane, then they will be accountable. So you are supposed to be humanitarian people. So because they are very ill, then they can do. That's how they like to say one thing.
James, on the international community thing, briefly if you can.
Very briefly, is there such a thing as the international community? in their engagement with DR Congo. For example, how many people in this room would trust, I don't know, Rwanda to broker peace in Congo, or Uganda to broker peace in Congo, or China to broker peace in Congo, or America to broker peace in Congo, or the UN, who have, in many cases, been undermined politically and are considered to be part of the opposition by some forces. The international community is not exactly united over Syria. So can we expect it to be united over the resource pot that is the Congo? The Congo has strategic minerals that are fundamentally important to the 21st century economy. It isn't simply a place which is looked at benignly by a united international community.
I think that's the fundamental answer to your question about why the international community does what can you expect from it and how confusing it is. It's precisely that. The international community is not one thing and it's got self-interest. There was a question over there I saw. Can you give the mic over? We'll take 2 or 3 now, and I think that's going to be more or less the last round, so you need to indicate it.
Thank you. I'm Michael from Liberia. I work for International Light. We share common experience, except that we are a step ahead. My understanding is that the longer conflict takes, there will be new issues, emerging issues, and different interests. So as long as the war in Congo continues, there's still going to be new things. I was listening to people talking about ethnicity. That wasn't before. Probably the next 5 years, it may not be ethnicity. It could be something else. So that's the issue. I don't know. What can we do, or people in Congo doing, when it comes to self-initiative in terms of addressing the conflict? This worked in Liberia. I mean, it got to a point that people were saying, okay, we are just tired of dying. Let's stop this. What would take the Congolese to that point, even though there are other dynamics in terms of international connections and whatnot. But what I do know is that if internally you are weak as a unit, people outside manipulate on that. That's the resources and other things like that. So what takes the Congolese to that point? I want to know.
Absolutely. Back to the Congolese and back to that. We'll take a couple more things here. Just down here in front. And then maybe there'll be 2 more after that.
My name is James. I'm a UK resident, a US citizen. Sir James actually touched on an interesting point. Usually there is an element of religious sectarian violence involved in this. I've only heard that sort of touched upon. I was wondering if that might be explored a bit further in terms of its relevance.
Okay. The religious factor. 2 in that row there, one at the end and one further on. Both need to be quite quick.
I was wondering about you could just pick a bit more on the role of natural resources in this. There is obviously a role that has also been playing in the Kivu tragedy, but also there's sort of billions of dollars of investment already underway in other parts of the Congo that are pouring money into the government in Kinshasa. You said something about growing the cake in the Congo so that it can kind of pick itself up off its feet. Really, is this kind of investment, is it a net positive thing for the Congo, or is it a net negative?
And just at the end of the row here.
Thank you very much. My name is Mr. Thomas Bikebi for the Congolese Family Center. I really want to say something which is going to be really interesting for every single person here.
But as I have said to the panelists, just as crisply as you can, please.
Yes. 8 million people died so far is not 8,000. Don't shy away to say that clearly. that the international community is part of the problem. That's why the solution is not coming out.
Actually, I think we can take one more. So Tom, that hand one.
Thank you so much. Andre Gomez from the University of Sussex. Forgive my ignorance. Now I'm less ignorant on the conflict, but I still feel very ignorant in terms of the peace deal.
Yeah.
So I wonder whether you could explain whether the peace deal that has been agreed is actually tackling some of the issues, because I'm very skeptical of this liberal peace-building strategy of bringing the international community, and what I want to really understand is to see whether there is a chance for a peace built on local ownership in a Congo. Thank you.
Okay, so there's a range of things here. This is the last round of questions. You can pick and choose. I mean, one of the issues which was raised, which is about not being afraid to name the international community as part of the problem. I think we've been doing that. So if you want to comment further, that's fine. There's the Congolese just say no approach that Michael wanted to ask you about. When does that moment come? Questions of religion and natural resources. And then the issue of the peace deal. Is it actually addressing key issues? Go ahead. Let's take it in the order in which we started. That makes Maria.
I'm going to comment on only a few of those. First, the quickest one. Religion in DRC doesn't really play that kind of factor. It doesn't. There was the Bundadia Congo movement, like a sectarian movement, which was brutally kind of repressed by the government. But this was in 2010, yes. But that was not because it was a religious movement, it was because it was drawing people to a sect, because it was seen as a political threat. It wasn't for religious reasons that it was, so religion really is not so much affected there. When do the Congolese just say no? I think Congolese really are tired of war. And it's only the very little elite that gains from the ongoing war in Congo in collaboration with the international and regional, etc. interests, and who enable those interests, that have an interest in keeping this war going on. So of course, as in any conflict, there are interests at an elite level, people who are interested in keeping the war going on. And whereas from 2009 to 2012, there was a short moment of some form of rapprochement between Kinshasa and Kigali. It wasn't peace, it wasn't stability, it was limited to a small number of highly placed people who were even aware of what the contents of that deal was. But it did provide some space for Congolese to start talking about governance issues, decentralization, nationality questions, a lot of issues that are very sensitive. Now, with a return to what is seen to be regional aggression war, or presented as such, that space is closed again. And for the simple reason that so many Congolese, is it 95%, live on less than $1 a day, they simply cannot afford to go marching in the street. There's not going to be, in this context, an Arab Spring for DRC. Because people are just too poor. They can't afford to go on strike for more than 24 hours. And also they have over 50 years of brutal exploitation, whether it was under a colonial regime or under the governments, have just come to lose faith, I think, in the belief that they themselves can actually change their situation. They have been told over and over and over again that other people are at the root of your problems, and other people can solve those problems for you. So whether it is the UN peacekeeping force or whoever. And so until that changes, it really, I think it's, that is really the big challenge, is how to enable Congolese to become actors for their own change. Just one comment on the peace, security, collaboration framework. This framework, I wouldn't even really call it a peace agreement. I know this is how it's being sold, because also it's very human. We need to see some light at the end of the tunnel. We need to believe this thing's really going to work. This brigade, maybe really this could work. And I understand that, but it is a very, very weak statement of intent. That is all that it is. It doesn't, and even in that, it does not contain a single intent that hasn't been voiced and signed many times before. So really for that to become more than just bland statement of intent, there has to be a really serious political process to put meat on that. And that has to comprise regional dialogue and domestic as well. And domestic dialogue that cannot be solely controlled by Kinshasa for the reasons we just mentioned, because then it will be oriented towards protecting Kinshasa's interests.
Right, thanks. So, Bobby, your side, two or three of these points?
In terms of what the Congolese are doing, I mean, we are doing incredibly a lot. I think Maria mentioned it, the society, Congo as a society is incredibly poor, but nonetheless, we have one of the most dynamic civil society in Africa. You have civil society voicing against incredible odds, and journalists. One of the journalists was actually killed just about a week and a half ago. So we have an amazing civil society, and people are striving. In the diaspora, for instance, we provide 6 billion every single year to the Congolese, to Congo, which is larger than the actual budget of the Congolese government. So we are trying, but the odds are simply huge and a lot against us. In terms of the peace deal, I think we also mentioned it, there isn't a lot in it. Essentially, it has 4 cornerstones: democracy, to stop interference from neighboring to Congo, security sector reform, and sort of to expand cross-border trade. In terms of democracy, the former election, the 2011 elections, it would be absurd to assume that Kabila won. He simply did not win. The guy who won is Tshisekedi, but Kabila is in power, and no one has yet even recognized it, but no one has the courage, the power to say, okay, no, you're not the leader. So that there is a problem. On top of that, you have an issue which the Congolese Senate, Upper Chamber, for instance, their mandate expired in January 2012, but Congo as a society has no money. So guess what they did? They continue to sit, to continue to be a parliamentarian, to continue to receive, £12,000 a month, while school teachers are receiving $30 a month. So those are the issues, and also there's another problem is the local election, which was promised in 2006 up to present day. It hasn't happened. In terms of stopping interference, first time this was signed was in 1999, the Lusaka Agreement. As we know, it continued. Interference would continue so long as there was a crisis of leadership in Kinshasa. Security sector reform. Kinshasa simply cannot do it. Kabila cannot ask certain generals in the army to get out of the army or to hand them to justice, or else he could potentially be killed himself. It's that way. His power, his leadership, his presidency rests on security, insecurity being present, impunity being present, the institution of the state is not functioning. That's also, he's in power. He cannot hand certain people in the government, in politics, or in the army to justice. That simply cannot happen. In terms of cross-border trade, that already happens illegally, at least. I don't see how that could be expanded a bit more. Religion, not incredibly significant, but the Congolese, the Catholic Church is amazingly significant. It's arguably the only institutions that continue to function perfectly well in Congo. That's the only one. And behind it you have the Anglican Church, which is slightly sort of behind it, and then you also have other denominations. I suppose that's as much as I would.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, I suppose I would begin to answer with a little vignette. This vignette revolves around the life of Laurent Kabila in the 1980s. He was living as an insurgent warlord in South Kivu. As a warlord, he controlled the gold mines. He was selling the gold to Tanzania, but he needed weapons. So he traded gold with the Congolese army that he was nominally fighting. They wanted money, gold. Kabila needed weapons. They could easily communicate across the front line. It was gold and the extraction of gold that was driving the conflict, not identity. Identities came second, third, fourth down the line. Now, alas, at this point, the presence of a warlord and their army and Mobutu's army extracting gold together caused immense problems for the people of South Kivu. The only thing they could cultivate is cassava because the army weren't patient enough to take that from the ground. It was a nightmare. But it was a nightmare that was conditioned by the natural resource of gold, and it is now conditioned by the coltan reserves all the way through. They were obviously more valuable in 2000, but the coltan has become less valuable and has become even worse because it means that labour that used to be paid is now slavery. So the resources, and to go back to this question, in the Kivus at a small scale, or are part of a bigger problem of the DRC, which is the resource question, which is shaping the patterns of governance. So the economy drives governance, just as governance drives economy. And so we've got a chicken and egg situation. Unless the economic resource question is addressed at the same time as the political question, I cannot see a solution to that. And that requires an enormous amount of coordination at an international level as well as national level.
Let me start by the question of religious link. I think just is an interesting one when it comes to hidden or unrecognized dynamics, which is personally I see the supernatural belief comes into that. An example to this is most of my militias have been recruiting child soldiers or recruiting anyone that based on a strong belief that if they wash themselves into some kind of blessed water, it would be proof against bullets. And that has been ongoing. In the regular armies, I've interviewed generals who they will tell you, but they won't tell you publicly, of course, and that wouldn't appear in the negotiation table as well. Those are the hidden aspects, where they will tell you that they have a prophet. A prophet has told me that I will win the war. So now, if you have two dynamics, two dealings, two realities, your dealings in the modern context without those supernatural beliefs, and you have those supernatural beliefs which are even more stronger. So you're dealing in a rational context at the negotiation table. Now, this is peace deal, that's what we're going to be doing. At the same time, you have a prophet that told you that you can't. So what do? That's where is the lock. Say, that's the aspect of a religious belief. And it's a cross-border of different ethnic groups. They will have kind of religious advisor. I go back to the question of a colleague, someone from Liberia, sorry for the name. Ask really a straight question. Can Congolese say one day we have had enough? Now, in a country like that where psycho-violence has become kind of everyday life, and that's what people have known. I've seen someone being shot in front of me when I was 7, and that has been ongoing until my other time. Say, and the irrational understanding of issues, that become kind of an issue where people cannot get to the point where to say, okay, can we go back and say, why are we into this? That's the only thing they have known in terms of the option. You look at the option when you have known something different. And that's where I feel, and I'm sorry I'm kind of giving you a negative answer, but that's where there is a complexity of going to that level. And my last answer to the question around natural resources, incredible move in terms of international response to the conflict minerals and the legislation in the USA in 2010. Now, but I do see that as oversimplifying. And Professor James just mentioned something which is incredible. The dealing where Laura Kabila was dealing, kind of selling gold to his people he's fighting. That's exactly what's still going on now. And when we talk about conflict minerals, it's as if those conflict minerals comes with the bullet inside, or they come leaking some sort of guns, liquid or something. No, and it's traceable. The tracing of those minerals is quite difficult. Where do you stand? If you're talking conflict minerals in terms of regular armed groups, for me, as a regular army, as an armed group too, so they will be trading each other, between each other. And to the customer, there's no way you can police the borders, because everybody is corrupted. And how it becomes a vetting system. So by the time you're tuning the traceable line in terms of supply chains, it goes cleaner until South Africa. And by the time it came to London, it's even more cleaner. But how we started is dirty, clean, and cleaner. But how do you trace that? So it's very oversimplifying when it comes to talk about conflict minerals. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. It seems to me that one of the issues in here is this question of how you translate sort of just saying no, the fatigue that people feel. How do you translate fatigue into action? One of the things which we've been talking about are the multiple barriers to that. The barriers which exist in systems of power, the barriers that exist in systems of trade and international interest, and the barriers that exist inside people's heads. And it's not at all going to be easy to push through that, to get through that, and it is not going to be quick. I think we all know that. Now, what I want to ask to round off each of the four panelists to do, and it's a 1-minute task. You are getting into an elevator with somebody who has power of decision in a way that could influence, possibly for better or possibly for worse, the situation in the DRC. You have between now and the 12th floor, 1 minute. Who is it that you got into the elevator with, and what do you say? And we'll start from 1 minute.
Right, okay. Now, there are two ways you can solve the crisis in Congo. The shorter way and the longer way. The longer way is the humanitarian crisis, the humanitarian way. And there is a chance by the time we reach the end, there will be no one left around the killers. And there are four major problems in terms of the humanitarian ways. I call it the 4 I's. Address impunity, address insecurity, address institutional failure in Kinshasa, and address the international trade of blood or conflict minerals. Those are the 4 drivers of this crisis. So that's the longer way, that's the humanitarian way. The shorter way, which is much more difficult, is address the crisis of leadership in Kinshasa. You solve that issue, you deal with Kinshasa, everything else will eventually finish. That's all I'll say.
And to whom did you address that, those remarks?
I want to keep a secret.
Maria?
Well, of course it's impossible to identify one person who has...
It can be quite big if you like.
Right. But I agree with the focus on Kinshasa. So if I was to choose one person as a reason alone and had a chance to talk to, I'd say it would be Kabila. And this is only recognizing, though, that he is surrounded by people who eat at his table and who could kill him anytime he cuts them off from that table. Still, being a leader means that he does. So I'll tell him, look, you want to make your country strong externally so that you can resist the meddling that you get from regional actors, from international actors, and this is what you say you want. You need to make your country strong internally. And this can only happen if citizens feel that the state actually is providing public goods, including security, and that they have a say in local affairs that affect them. And that means you need to decentralize decision-making processes. Bring those processes closer to the citizens, like you said you would in the country's constitution, and which has never moved anywhere. You can use any model that you want for your country. This is the only model.
But it is get something done for the Congolese people and get those decisions closer to where people are so that they can be passed.
If I had to choose somebody again and go back, Sam, I'll go to Joseph Kabila. And what I would say to him is, look, external forces will not be the answer to the country problems. On the problems, on the problem solution of the country, and build a strong leadership that will promote cohesion of everyone in the country. External forces have been there from the 1960s. You had UN troops, you had mercenaries, and there were French troops in the 1980s, and now you have troops, or UN troops, which is, as we say, the capacity, which is quite a lot. Say, I would remind him about those capacities, which will not be an answer. And the brigade that is there today, we won't end up in the answer, but actually the ownership of internal problems.
Okay, well, that's two rights he's taken for being told there is something you can do, but by working with the people. James?
I'm going to focus on the outside, not the inside, and basically I would speak to a camera, to the Congolese people, and say, back Mary Roberts. Why? Because she has no history of engagement with the peace process. She's from Ireland. The Irish have a particular heroic role in Congolese history, with Roger Casement addressing Leopold's legacy, enforcing a solution to the resource-led conflicts. Unfortunately, that happened to be turning the Congo into Belgian colonial order, but hey, he at least tried. And she is the figure who might broker an external relationship that could lead to peace.
Okay, great. Thank you all so much. This is such a tangled and contentious and complex question. It can be sometimes quite a gloom-laden question. We haven't ducked the hard questions and the difficulties, but I think we've also seen some ways in which it's possible to move forward. Alex, what is the title of your book?
Not My Worst Day.
Okay. So, based on your experiences in DRC, yes. Got some copies here if you'd like to see it and talk to them. We also have a report sitting at the back. You can hold it up because you are the co-author of it, called Ending the Deadlock Towards a New Vision of Peace in Eastern DRC, which I think offers a really cogent and clear analysis of many of the things that we've been talking about this evening, and it's really got a lot of good reaction. You can now relax by having a drink and some snacks. You can see if you can get hold of some of the panel members and ask them the questions that you didn't ask. Thank you very much for your attention during this evening, and please join me in thanking our panelists.